Crafter's Log. Stardate, July. Our destination, a year-delayed honeymoon cruise around the south coast of Spain. But my crafting friends have an insatiable appetite, not only for crafts, but also for craft-related content. So will I be able to record and edit enough to entertain them in my absence? If you're watching this, I guess it was a success. Hi! It has been a long time since I did a crafter's log, and for that I must apologise. These types of videos actually really stress me out and take a long time to film and edit, so combine that with my generally slow crafting and yeah, recipe for procrastination. But I'm gonna do a bumper episode this week, partially as apology for that, partially just for Tammy, and partially as a second apology as well, because if this goes up when it should, we will be somewhere in the middle of the ocean, and quite likely quite drunk. So I won't be able to reply to your comments in real time this week, but rest assured I will catch up just as soon as I can. In the meantime, behave yourselves. Let's just get this party started with some cross-stitch, shall we? Cross-stitch has actually been a bit of a tricky one for me lately. As you know, I do many crafts, and as part of that you just naturally go through phases. The last few months I've been mostly in a knitting phase, which is super fun, super seasonally inappropriate, but also naturally doesn't leave a huge amount of time for cross-stitch. And since I have an obligation to design and stitch a new cross-stitch pattern every single month for Ko-fi members, that's where most of my stitching time lately has had to go, bringing us such recent delights as these hobnobs. This random blackwork pattern that I doodled out in about 60 seconds but actually really love. A brief foray into isometric pixel art style. A detour into obscure Eurovision references / mottos to live by. And of course, this latest one that just went up last Friday. I love this, it makes me very happy to look at. You'll notice there's obviously a range of styles and subjects here, and that was always kind of the point. One of my craft goals for this year was to hone in on my design style, and you can't really do that without experimenting a bit, you know? But this is sort of related to something that I want to talk about in a separate video, so I won't say too much for now, but I'm sort of getting an idea now of what I want my patterns to be, and it's just a case of improving my skills and being able to consistently do that. I am immensely grateful to everyone who supported me during this weird experimental phase, whether that is by chucking £2 a month in the Ko-fi jar, or just buying the occasional pattern outright. As far as actual regular cross-stitch goes, probably the only pattern to see major progress since you last saw it is Errol. He's been the focus of 2 successful 24 hours of cross-stitch marathon weekends in a row, first in January and then in April, but sadly he's going to have to miss the next one because it happens while we are on the cruise ship and he was a bit too big to take with. Yes, that's right, it is somehow already another 24 hours of cross-stitch again on Friday the 19th of July. Obviously I'm not hosting anything this time, but we do have the channel up in the Discord and I know some people are planning to post their updates there, so feel free to join them if you want. In the April marathon, I did get a ton of progress on Errol's head, which hasn't moved on a ton since. But his little feet were still unfinished, and there were some missing stitches in his body as well, so I went back to do that and it's taken a surprisingly long time. Lots of little confetti bits, 2 stitches of this and 3 of that, you know how that goes. We've got there though, which means I am back up at the head and we are starting to enter the home stretch. Given that I did start him for an ill-fated Discworld make-along that was supposed to end in January, the less said about my speed here, the better. But, as we always say around here, progress is progress. Oh yeah, I should probably say, if you don't recognise the name, Errol is a character from the Terry Pratchett book Guards, and he's always been one of my favourites. He's just this relatably scrawny, scruffy little fella, you know? The pattern uses officially licensed art by Paul Kidby, who does a lot of the book covers, and I just love that you can get an official Discworld pattern like that and you don't have to feel icky about where you bought it from. So the pattern is just called Errol the Swamp Dragon, and it's available from Lindisfarne Designs either through their website or their eBay shop. Unfortunately, for whatever insane reason in 2024, you can only get their patterns in paper format. I did manage to get this imported into Pattern Keeper by taking photos of every page, but it means the markup functionality is a little bit basic. So there's that, plus it also uses some symbols that are very similar to others, and also sometimes the back stitch covers up the symbol entirely, so you just have to kind of guess what stitch goes there. I would have to say it's not been the most frictionless stitching experience. And because it's officially licensed, it's not like it was a cheap pattern either. I do think it's been worth it though. It's been a brilliant project to have for those marathon weekends, and honestly, just as soon as I saw his little eye there, I was just in love. Look at him, he's so cute. I'm stitching on 36 count even weave from sewitall.com, which I got as part of one of their clearance grab bags. Highly recommend, they are great value. But it does mean I don't really know what the official colourway of this is. It's basically a very lightly speckled beige, so lightly speckled that it might not be showing up on camera, but I will try my best. Called for DMC, standard 2 strands, stitching over 2, and this is also the first time that I've stitched over 2 on a high count even weave, and I have to say I love how this looks. Like, it makes me feel like a really fancy stitcher. Wow, okay, that's already kind of it for actual proper progress, which makes me feel like a terrible stitcher. But you have to remember, I was extremely ill for the back end of last year and the first part of this, and I spent all of my time just like resting and trying to recover, so I can't be blamed. I do just want to talk about a couple of other projects though. The first main one is this, which is the Peppermint Purple Year of Blackwork stitch along from all the way back in 2022? Now, last time I worked on this, I'm pretty sure was June of that year when I took it on our trip to the Lake District.
I'm a creature of the lake.
And it lives in a box next to my crafting couch, so I'm just constantly pulling it out and looking at it and going, not today. But every time I do that, I think of Victoria. Victoria popped up in my comments sometime in 2022 and announced her intention to also stitch this. We both fell increasingly behind as the year went on, and then the updates just kind of stopped from both sides. So every time I look at this now, there's just this little voice in my head going, but Victoria finished hers ages ago. Well, imagine my surprise a couple of weeks ago when a certain somebody popped back up in my comments and reported that in fact, no, she had not completed this. Somehow just knowing this has given me a burst of inspiration. I know I really want to get this done. So I've decided, once we are back from holiday and I'm all settled back in, I am going to focus on my stitching. No more of this, I'm tired so I'll just do a couple of rounds of knitting and then go to sleep. No. I am a serious crafter and I'm going to prove it. And I'm going to prove it by not only completing that blackwork pattern, but this one too. This is even older, 2021 I'm pretty sure it was. And I've said this before, but at the time when I first bought the pattern, I was convinced this would only take me a week to stitch. A week. See, it doesn't look like a huge amount of stitching, does it? But because it's all individual cogs, you're like stopping and starting all the time and fastening off threads, and it just takes forever, especially if you're doing these really little ones. I can have a good couple of hours to sit down and focus on this and still come away with barely any progress at all. There has been a bit of progress though. I think last time you saw it, I was maybe just starting on these little ones around here, so North America is very slowly appearing. That pattern is Steampunk World Map by Circle Cross, and I have enabled many people with this shop link over the years, so I'm going to put up a warning here because you should know it's a very inspirational shop and you may lose yourself for a while. And of course there is always Autumn Stories, my full coverage that made such good progress for a while and then just sort of stalled completely. I have done some work on that in the last few months, but honestly it's so few stitches and they're beige on beige. I honestly don't think you can even tell. Again though, this one's been playing on my mind. I really want to get back in the groove. It's amazing how, like, for me at least, I don't know if this applies to everyone, but having to take a forced step back from crafting for a few months has just really impacted me for so long afterwards in terms of motivation. Maybe I'll turn it into a video. How I got my stitching groove back. Or how long it takes me to complete a specific one of these projects if I sit down and focus. I don't know, that's a note for future me. Alright, so you may admittedly be disappointed by my actual stitching progress, but I know what'll cheer you up. You saw some of my new cross-stitch toys a few weeks ago, including this amazing needle minder, but what you might not know is that I got some other needle minders for my birthday too. Sorry Marie, I know you hate looking at your own stuff, you might want to fast forward the video for a couple of minutes, because you are getting called out. Yes, a lot of you know Marie from our Discord community, and she recently got into polymer in a really big way. We've actually been friends for ages, ever since I ran across her old YouTube channel about her Etsy shop and correctly identified her as one of me. And for my birthday this year, she sent me the most ridiculous collection of polymer clay earrings, including these bad boys here. Just look at these. There's literally a cup of tea and a hobnob. I mean, come on. But as well as all those earrings, she also made me some needle minders and oh my god. This one is really cute. It's specifically themed on our wedding flowers that Dave and I crocheted together last year. In fact, those ones over there I'm currently using up the leftover blue and white yarn from that. We'll talk about that more in a minute. But of course she knew that, and so she made me this very on-theme minder that is just adorable. Also looks a bit like wedding cake, and I have to admit it makes me hungry for cake. I very much doubt I even need to explain this one. If you ask anybody who knows me what I'm into, they're going to say crafts and Lord of the Rings. So you can imagine how much I love this. It's also a great reminder of the most elaborate birthday cake I've ever had, and damn it, now I really do need cake. And now, the grand finale. The needle minder that best demonstrates the deranged creativity of its maker. It doesn't have the same impact if I just hold this one up, so I'm going to put in some footage of it in context here. Presenting a needle on an embroidery hoop needle minder, on an embroidery hoop needle minder, on an embroidery hoop. Yep, it's needle minderception. What can I even say? What kind of mind comes up with this? The best kind. That's what kind. All of this stuff, the earrings and the needle minders, were individually packaged with little cryptic clues written on the outside so I could try and guess what each thing was before opening it. Probably took us most of my birthday morning to actually get into them all. But you know what? It gave us a good laugh, and of course I will never need to buy earrings. Ever again. Thank you, Marie. I know I've said it a million times privately, but it doesn't hurt to do it one more time in public. This was brilliant. And if anyone out there is intrigued by Marie's absurd genius, you can check out her new jewellery brand over on Instagram at Manikai Creations, including making of reels of most of that stuff she sent. So if you are still on Instagram, maybe go show some support, because as much as I'm taking the mick here, she really does make lovely stuff and also is very funny in reels. Okay, one other bit of haul that I definitely need to mention is that I did get the extended L-bar for my Lowry stand, and it was an absolute game changer. If you watched my Lowry first impressions video, you'll know I absolutely loved it out of the box, and the only small problem was that the default L-bar that comes with it wasn't quite wide enough to reach over the arm of our couch. I said in that video that I was going to save up for a bit and get a longer bar, but apparently that just wasn't good enough for some of you, because I quickly received a couple of Ko-fi donations specifically earmarked for a new L-bar. Well, your wish is my demand. This is the default one, and this is the 6-inch longer one I ended up going for. You can get custom sizes, and you can increase the height as well, but I measured things out and this was enough to solve my couch problem once and for all, as well as being a good size for recording videos. It does make the whole thing even more unbalanced, but that's nothing a bit of wedging in with a thick book can't fix. If you are considering a longer bar for yours, do just bear in mind there's a limit to how far you can push the clamp part onto it, so it does make the whole setup a bit less compact. Totally worth it to not have to sit like a shrimp to use it though, but just something to consider. Thank you so much to the people who were too impatient to let me save up for this myself. I'm really chuffed with it, and I just appreciate your random act of generosity very much. Okay, finally for the stitching section. It's not technically cross-stitch, but I have kind of been peer pressured into doing my first ever needlepoint. Marianne, who has been a bad influence on me pretty much since I started the channel like 3 years ago, just messaged me one day and was all, "Hey, watch this video, we need to try canvas work." So I watched the video and yeah, I needed to try canvas work. But it was weirdly hard to find any information about it, and I think, like, I'm still far from 100%, but I think maybe it's because it's called canvas work some places, and it's just needlepoint in other places, but then there are also multiple different kinds of needlepoint, so actually I have no idea what I'm talking about. If anybody knows the word for the craft I am talking about, please let me know. In the meantime, I've managed to source some supplies. I bought this ball pattern from Etsy, which I will need to find some suitable backing fabric for, but that's a future me problem. I bought the wrong canvas that I'm hoping will work out anyway. The pattern calls for mono, and this is interlock, but again I can find very little info on what that actually means in a practical sense. Maybe once I figure all of this out, I'll do a video explaining it all to any other confused stitchers out there. And I got myself down to my local craft shop to get that last stamp on the yarn crawl card, and while I was there I found they had a small but decent-ish selection of DMC cotton pearl. So in an effort to shop local and all that, I picked some random colours from the few that they had, and we'll see how it goes. If I hate them once I start stitching, I'll have to order new ones online, but we'll just see. Since this is a foray into a completely new craft, I do of course want to record a video about it, and that meant I had to leave it and not start anything until after we get back from holiday, which has been difficult. I won't lie. But these are the sacrifices of the crafty video maker. Alright, so if you were just here for cross stitch, I think that's pretty much us done. Thank you for popping in, I hope to see you again soon. Maybe skip to the end and check out the shoutouts before you leave. Everybody else, knitting and crochet. Let's see what we've got. I think in the last crafter's log I'd either just started or was just planning to start a pair of Escarina socks. Again for that ill-fated Discworld make-along. And these actually did get finished. The pattern is by Rachel Coopy and it's named for the main character in Equal Rights, which was actually the very first Discworld book I ever read as a kid. Michelle fact. The yarn is Socks Yeah, which is also by Rachel Coopy, although that's a total coincidence. I just happen to really like that sock yarn and I had this green in stash. It was fate. I really enjoyed knitting this pattern actually because it was something a little bit different. The cable pattern on it twists and winds around just like the pattern on Escarina's staff in the book, and it meant that every round was different to the one before. It required concentration, but not too much concentration. Just that perfect amount, you know? What I don't like about this project so much is that I somehow chose the wrong size. Now I've been knitting socks for quite some time and I know 64 stitches around, that's my sock size. And this pattern came in 3 sizes if memory serves, one of them being 64 stitches around. Perfect, right? Well, see, I saw in some other people's Ravelry notes that they usually go for 64 stitches as well, but with this particular pattern they'd found they needed to size up and go for the medium as opposed to the small or whatever way around it was. So I thought, ha! I've found this out in advance. I'll start with the next size up and save myself time. I am so smart. Yeah, I don't know what was going on with those other projects. I could absolutely just have stuck with my usual size. So these are very slightly too big. It's not a deal breaker though, I've mostly been wearing them over tights and to be honest, they'll come in useful for those few days after we get back from our cruise when my feet are 3 times their normal size due to all of that salty food. Still love them, but lesson learned. 64 stitches it is. Now, those socks started off really quick, but I cast them on at the beginning of November, and obviously shortly after that was when I caught COVID, and I got really ill and everything slowed down. So I didn't finish them until I think about mid to late January. Once I did though, I needed another sock project to replace them immediately. So in an effort to cheer myself up because I was feeling very, very down, I kicked up this amazing speckle yarn. This is the colourway Burst from Noodle Soup Yarns, and it is stunning. I settled on the Show Off Stranded Socks pattern by Anne Campbell, which is admittedly very similar at first glance to the Drippity Drop socks I knitted last year. But I was intrigued by the slightly different construction, with the gusset actually knitted at the same time as the heel. You can also choose from 3 different stitch patterns for the gusset. I went with reverse stockinette, but there was also stockinette and I think maybe seed stitch? It's been a while. I would love to be able to give you a definitive review of this construction method, but honestly, even after doing it twice, I have to say I'm kind of ambivalent. I honestly can't decide whether I prefer it to the standard separate heel flap or whether it makes absolutely no difference. Sometimes you try a new technique and it's just an absolute light bulb moment, you know, and you're wondering why did I ever do this differently before? But yeah, not so much this time. As far as fit goes, I do feel like it resulted in a slightly shallower gusset, which I was a bit worried about because I've got a very high instep and that's why I usually stick to the heel flap and gusset type of sock. The shallower heel types are often just really uncomfortable for me to wear. But even though this was a bit shallower, I have to say in my case, it was absolutely fine. It doesn't feel weird. Yeah, really the only difference is that construction method, and since I have no strong feelings one way or the other, I don't really know what to say about that. It was an interesting experiment, if nothing else. Now, you might remember all the way back in January, I finally rescinded the years-long rule about no more shawls. In fact, since we've decided land holidays are dead to us and we are cruise lifers now, a shawl would actually be a very handy thing to have. I picked out the pattern Big Damn Heroes by Kimberly Galinsky, which I'd had in my Ravelry queue ever since it was released in 2013, so it just goes to show past me had good taste. It's a poncho style so it won't blow away into the sea at a drunken deck party, and I love the clean lines of the design. It's actually based on Zoe's dress from the movie Serenity, the one that she wears at the end of the film to a certain event. Too soon. Too soon. And as for the yarn, I had all of this grey Cascade 2020 fingering lying around, which has honestly been about 3 or 4 failed projects over the years, but I thought I wanted something quite neutral, you know, that I could wear with multiple different things. So I thought maybe, finally, this yarn's time to shine has come. I'll be honest, at first this pattern was a complete slog and I was really regretting starting it. Stitch Squad members might remember this from one of the bonus videos, but I was just not having a good time at all. One of the problems is that you really need to concentrate. The stitch pattern is reflected a lot of the time, so it's easy to lose track of whether you're doing like yarn over increase or increase yarn over. And then the stitch pattern shifts over by 1 stitch on every row to create those diagonals. I was trying to knit this my usual way, which was PDF pattern up on my laptop screen, next to me on the couch while we watched TV together before bed. And it just was not working. I kept losing track of where I was in the row, I kept making mistakes that would take an hour plus to fix. Oh, nightmare. Thankfully, I got over this by doing 2 things. First thing is a little bit nerdy, but never mind. I knew this needed to be finished by the date of our honeymoon cruise. So I made a little spreadsheet to track my progress along with a graph. Red line is how many rows I'd done, blue line is how many I should have done to be on track. Quite the kick up the backside. I also ended up printing out the chart on actual paper. I've literally never had to do that with any pattern before ever, but it made such a difference with this one. See, normally with a shawl pattern, you'll have like a few stitches of border, then some kind of repeatable section, then a central spine, then more repeatable section, and then the other border. Those repeatable sections mean that the chart for it can actually be quite compact. With this pattern, the charts are unavoidably quite long, and the designer has tried to get around this by providing the charts in different formats. So you can have them all on one page, which is called the digital chart and is meant for viewing on a device of some kind, or you can have them split across multiple pages. Unfortunately, neither of those really worked for me. It was either a faff scrolling between pages, or the all-on-one-page chart was just too big to really scan and know where you were, especially since each row looked pretty much the same as the last, but just shifted over by 1. Half the time I didn't even know what row I was on, honestly, never mind where I was within it. And you know what, I can't say that I saw anybody else saying this in their project notes, so it very well might have just been me. But if you ever are having trouble parsing a digital knitting chart like this, maybe just try printing it out and see if that helps. Okay, enough about the pattern. I got into the swing, I made excellent progress. This flat line here would be the mass creative burnout that a ton of us succumbed to in April and May, but then I had that misbehaving wisdom tooth out and I basically did nothing other than knit for a week, so that finished it off nicely. Behold, my new cruise shawl. I'm not going to hide the fact that there are some mistakes, and they are glaring. But thankfully, it seems like they're all on one side, so other side is now the front. I've actually fixed those extra holes just by weaving in a bit of scrap yarn to close them up. Whatever, nobody's going to notice a wonky looking stitch when we're at a sweaty silent disco on a cruise ship. I am really pleased with how this turned out, and especially how the yarn softened up in the washing and blocking stage. It's never been my favourite to work with, it's a little scratchy on my hands, but I did know that when you wash it, it actually goes really soft and it has a beautiful drape to it, so all good there. Calling this one a definite success, and to be honest, I also have quite a lot of that yarn in purple and I'm kind of eyeing that up now too. Now, I just mentioned the April-May burnout, and the one thing that really helped me start to claw my way back out of it was casting on some new socks. I had foolishly left the sock needles empty after those last ones, and that's never a good sign for me mental health-wise. I wanted to use up that blue and white yarn that we'd got last year for our wedding flowers and make something to commemorate our first anniversary. Of course, our first anniversary was actually April 1st, so I was way behind on that before I even started, but it's the thought that counts, right? I chose the Krufka Socks pattern by Comfort Zone Knits, which is definitely a much more cutesy style than I would usually go for. But I don't know, they just called to me. It happens like that sometimes. Unfortunately, this has not been a hassle-free project. First, I had to tackle my first ever jogless stripes. I mean, well, I didn't have to. I could have just lived with the jog, but the pattern came with a link to a tutorial for doing it, and I thought, why not learn the new thing? How hard can it be to knit stripes? It was a disaster. This photo was actually of my, I think, 3rd attempt. until a kind Macedonian pointed me in the direction of a better method and I started to get slightly tidier results. I don't know what it is though. I don't know if I'm missing something fundamental, or maybe I just keep getting distracted and I miss an important step sometimes. But when it came to the cuff stripes, we were back to square one and they were a mess. The heel also uses a new to me method that resulted in big holes at the side where it joined on, and I had to do that 2 or 3 times I think to get it to look tidy. And then somehow I ended up with that thing where you're magic looping and you get like a line where the stitches were divided. I have been magic looping for over a decade and I have never, literally never had that problem until these socks. I swear the project is cursed. Which is not great when it's supposed to be commemorating your wedding, you know? But I reckon it will be okay in the end. There's not much a wash and a block can't fix, and I think wearing these wonky stripes proudly can maybe be some kind of metaphor for accepting each other, flaws and all. Or something. I don't know, I really cannot bring myself to frog them and try again. Last knitting whip then is the Helix Halter by Jessie Maid. I was looking for something for that fabulous Eurovision yarn, and this jumped out at me and demanded to be made. The only problem was... well, no, actually, there were 2 problems. First problem, I wasn't sure I'd have enough yarn. It's kind of tricky when all you've got's a range, but also there was the added complication that this pattern is sleeves optional. So I figured the lower end of the range must be the smallest size top without sleeves, and the higher end of the range must be the biggest size with sleeves. I did some calculations, I did some what will you do if you actually do run out of yarn type thoughts, and I came up with a plan. That plan was to copy other people and go with the shorter sleeve version instead, because that way I would definitely have enough yarn, but also I think it's super cute. As it turns out, I'm gonna have more than enough yarn, and in fact I only started on the second hank with the start of this first sleeve. So maybe I can even make something else fun with the leftovers. There's the other sleeve and all kinds of armhole ribbing still to go though, so we'll see. Problem 2 is that this is 100% wool yarn, which isn't necessarily what you would think of as an obvious choice for a summer top. There's a very good reason most of these are made of cotton. But stick with me here though, cause see, with the long sleeves, even in cotton I don't think I could get away with this in the absolute heat of summer. I think I would struggle. But cooler summer evenings? That bit where it's just starting to head towards autumn and everyone else is still in t-shirts but I have to wear a coat because these bits of my arms specifically get quite cold. That's where I think this top could come in clutch. It might still be too warm, honestly. I'm not going to know until I've finished it. But it has been an enjoyable knit, so if I have to frog the sleeves, or even if I have to frog the entire thing and make something completely different, so be it. That's the beauty of working with yarn, and I'm really trying to embrace frogging as just part of the process and not something to be feared. In fact, that's a good thing, because I already did have to frog a ton of it. See, the colours were starting to pool real weirdly around the boob area. I loved how the colours worked on this top part where it was knitted flat, so to try and recreate that, I re-knitted the body with a few rounds from one end of the yarn and the next few rounds from the other. That did cause a few tangles, I won't lie, but I much prefer how it looks now. I don't have a photo of the completed body on me, but I did take this one the other night, so it should give you a general idea. How fun is that? Absolutely wild colours that don't match a single other thing I own, but sometimes it's just fun to get out of your comfort zone. Okay, this has all been knitting so far, but I do have a crochet whip as well. Remember that jewel spun I bought during the Great British Yarn Crawl? Well, I kind of felt like it needed to either become a cardigan of some kind or possibly an emotional support chicken. I had bought 2 balls so that I'd have enough if I decided on the cardigan, and that's the way I've eventually decided to go. I've already made a good start on the Doveport cardigan, which is a free pattern from a site called For the Frills. However, all the projects on Ravelry are from skinny people, and I have a sinking feeling that this isn't going to look very good on me at all. On the other hand, it took me a week of very casual, just bits here and there type crocheting to get the entire body done, so... Again, if I need to just frog it and do something else, then that's fine. The body is worked from the bottom part up, and it's all one part until here, where you do the 2 front sections and the back section separately. So it was a bit like the summer top again. The stitch count changed dramatically, and so did the pooling. And I've ended up doing those separate panels by, again, working from both ends of the ball and alternating it every 2 rows, I think, in this case. What I didn't bother doing is matching up the colour repeats on each of the front pieces. And that was on purpose. I thought it would be cool, but now I'm looking at it and I'm kind of thinking, slight regret. We'll see how much yarn's left when I finish, because again this one might be a bit of a close run thing, yardage wise, but if there is enough, maybe I'll look at ripping out one of those panels and doing it again. I don't know. I'll kind of just have to see how it all comes together, honestly. Very much enjoying the yarn though, and this is so quick to make that honestly, whatever happens, I don't care. Alright, in terms of future plans then, I dropped in a little bit of foreshadowing there with the mention of the emotional support chicken, but yeah, that's happening. I'd been thinking about it for a while anyway. We were talking about it in Discord and DH asked specifically if it could wait till July, and I thought, oh, that would be a hilarious project to be knitting on a cruise ship. And then some friends on Mastodon started on about it too, and now before you know it, we've got a whole group and we are hurtling towards a chicken fest knit along whether we want it or not. At first, the plan was just going to be to stash dive and use something I already owned. I found this red heart acrylic, in Dave's stash actually, that he said I'm welcome to use, but I don't think there's enough of it left, so I'd have had to combine it with something or buy more. But after a moment's thought, I realised this chicken needs to be blue, for reasons which do make sense. I will not share them here, but it'll make sense when you see the finished thing. Just go with me for now. Blue is definitely the colour I use least, and none of my stash yarn was doing anything to inspire. But luckily, we have recently started a buying challenge over in the Discord. You can choose to be team no buy, or you can choose to be team buy things without feeling like a trash person who doesn't deserve to buy things. I believe there's also team inherited supplies and team play the system by getting people to buy you gifts. I don't know, it's an ill-defined challenge with lots of teams. I am firmly team buy things without feeling like a trash person who doesn't deserve to buy the things. So I got myself down to the yarn shop and I came home with these beauties. 2 skeins of Stylecraft Colour Twist in the colourway Night Sky, which is a dark but fairly vibrant blue with this twist of oranges and stuff running through it. Absolutely not the sort of thing I had in mind before going. But the heart wants what the heart wants. Watch out for chicken action soon, and if you want to join us on Mastodon or on Discord, or just by knitting one of your own and mentioning something to that effect down in the comments, please feel free. Wow, this really is a long video. My camera has already overheated twice. So, sewing! As recently as April, I was sitting on a video call confidently saying that no, I wasn't going to make a load of cruise wear this time round. I made a lot of clothes last year, of course, and I'm going to be wearing a lot of those again this time. But that hasn't lasted long, which I'm justifying by saying that last year I was kind of guessing at what might be needed for a cruise. This time I know better and I can fill in the few gaps that I found. So I think it's okay. I have 2 dresses already complete, plus that grey shawl that we already saw. I've got a mostly complete cover-up, and I was planning to make some cute matching masks from scrap fabric before we went, but I'm not sure I'm going to have time. I don't know. I'll try. Dress 1 was the result of this weird fabric spontaneously jumping into my basket while I was ordering something else. It was only £1 a metre, and it's so not me at all, but it looked quite nice in some of the project photos that other people had posted. I figured if nothing else, I could use it to test this dress pattern I've had for a while and iron out any problems with it. But actually, I love the result. It's so fun and it just seems like the perfect thing for a holiday. It's basically a sack dress, and I love a good sack dress because they're just so comfy to wear and all you need is belt to make them look a lot better fitting than they are. The fabric is a polyester, which I know a lot of people hate, but I actually really like the feel of it. It doesn't aggravate any of my sensitive skin bits, and also it literally will not crease whatever you do, which makes it perfect for a cruise when you are not allowed an iron. This pattern is Quick Sew K4172, and I did have to make a couple of adjustments, but nothing complicated. As per usual, it's drafted for 5'6", so I had to add a couple of inches of length because I'm taller than that. But also, those shoulder straps. Oh my god. The pattern has you basically construct the entire thing, then try it on and just kind of adjust the shoulder straps one half inside the other to get an idea of how much you need to chop off. I think I must have removed at least 4 inches, maybe up to 6. I don't know, it was a lot. And I know I've got a short torso, but come on. It's not just me either. There aren't exactly a ton of photos of this dress available online, but the ones that I found definitely had the same problem I did, which is that if I hadn't removed that length, there was going to be a lot of bra on show around the sides. Anyway, crazy fabric, great dress, has pockets. Very excited to wear this on holiday. The second complete dress I can blame almost entirely on the terrible influence of CamiCat over on Mastodon, who is constantly posting about patterns that I both need and lack the funds and ability for. But she posted about the Bella frock from Lydia Naomi, and I thought it looked simple enough even for the likes of me. I never used to think I liked big sleeves, but my emergency backup wedding dress from Amazon had them, and actually they were really nice to wear. I also learned last year that they tend to keep the insides of cruise ships quite cold, and so having long sleeves is really great. The pattern does call for 70% stretch fabric, and I found that really difficult to shop for. Most of the places I found don't list what percentage stretch you're getting, they just call it stretch. So I don't know if I was doing something wrong or shopping in the wrong places there. Advice welcome. I ended up getting a cheap stretch velvet from Pound Fabrics, which turned out to be a much more stunning shade of purple in real life than it looks on the product page. The pattern instructions did include a bit on how to work out how much stretch your fabric has, but to be honest, the method they use seems very subjective to me, and I'm still not sure what that fabric actually is. I figured it was close enough and I winged it a bit, but it does fit. Again, I did need to add some overall length, but I also tried my first ever full bust adjustment, and this went terribly. To be honest, most of the time, I'm happy to take the fall. I'm not a very good sewist, I'm still kind of a beginner and I'm learning as I go. But in this case, I'm gonna blame the pattern. It was super detailed on how to do a full bust adjustment, right up until it suddenly wasn't and it just left you to figure out the end part on your own. I'm gonna talk about that more in a future video though, so that is enough complaining for now. As a result of that, the fit round here isn't the best. You can see there are some ripples, but again, who cares when you're at a disco in the middle of the sea? Absolutely in love with this dress, it is so me. I will say the pattern asked for quite structured, stiff fabric to hold those massive sleeves in the examples, but that's expensive and they look really impractical, so I'm very happy with my drapier version here. You might notice there are some marks in the velvet. I've never used velvet before and I have been trying some of the tips I found online to get rid of them, brushing it with scraps of itself and so on, but nothing really seems to work. I don't really know if this velvet is just bad, I mean it was very cheap, so fair enough, or if the fabric itself is fine and I'm just missing a trick somewhere. If anyone is experienced with velvet, again, it's kind of too late for this cruise, but if you let me know I might be able to rescue the fabric before the next one. Everyone has a few creases here and there on a cruise ship though, unless you are paying the extortionate prices for the iron-in service, so again, definitely not going to stop me wearing it. I love it. It's fine. Last but not least, I also picked up this weird red and turquoise chiffon. Again, that's from Pound Fabrics. I basically just buy everything from Pound Fabrics now. My original plan for this was actually the longer version of that sack dress pattern. That's why I was testing it on the weird stripy fabric. But obviously I was going to make an underdress of some kind as well because this is very see-through. Somehow though, I forgot that I'm not like a summer girl, and I just got swayed by this vision of me swanning around the place in elegant drapey see-through caftan cover-up thing. So that's what's happening here, and I'm quite glad because I've made some mistakes due to never having worked with chiffon before, and those mistakes might have ruined an actual dress, but for a cover-up that just has to get me from the cabin to the hot tubs and back, it doesn't really matter. Again, crease-free material, invaluable in a cruise situation. The sleeves and the hem are all finished off, but I've been procrastinating the neckline. This isn't sewn from a pattern, I just searched YouTube for how to sew a caftan and followed the first likely looking tutorial, and it did call for doing the neck much earlier, but I was scared of it, so here we are. I will do it before we leave for the airport, but I admit, it might be a last minute thing. Alright, this is normally where I would put the other crafts section, but to be honest, I've not been doing a whole lot of other crafts, and that's good because I can feel my voice is starting to go. I have been drawing a lot, but that's for a mysterious future project that you will no doubt hear about soon, so no spoilers for now. That lace making kit is still calling my name when time presents itself, but yeah, I've mostly just been knitting. Sometimes that's how it goes. All good as long as I'm making stuff, right? And this is also normally where I would put life updates, but my life since November has just been a series of health annoyances and nobody needs to hear about that again. I did get some amazingly comfy pants lately though. That's probably the most exciting thing that's happened to me, but seriously, these pants are great. So, on to shoutouts. Here are some channels that are absolutely worth your time in no sensible order whatsoever. Froglin is technically a woman of many crafts, but her main love is weaving, and she puts out conveniently short, usually hilarious, always relatable whip updates every Wednesday. I genuinely look forward to these so much despite knowing nothing about weaving, but also, I might need to get into weaving. Katie Makes Stuff was also a member of April May Burnout Club, but she's back with a vengeance and as entertaining as ever. If you've been around for a while, you might remember her from the time we both made giant pants. Her channel is mostly sewing, a bit of leathercraft, with lots of talk of thrifting and fun projects, but the main attraction is just Katie herself. She's very funny, and like with most of the people on this list, I wish she didn't live halfway around the world, because we would have fun together. JJ Crochets, clues in the name what kind of craft she does. Very new to making studio vlogs, and I don't think I've commented on any of her videos yet, so she's going to see this mention and just be like, who is that? But if you like squishy frogs, this is the channel for you. Crafting with Casca, again mostly sewing, but just look at this dress she made and tell me she is not amazing. That's right, you can't. Rogue Mama Stitcher is always one of my favourite floss tubes. If you just want to relax and let the calm stitching vibes wash over you, highly recommend. Stephanie Overfield, you might know as Stitchy Steph over on Instagram. She's actually very local to me, so if you enjoy a good regional accent with your cross stitch, she has got you covered. And finally, I definitely need to mention the Cozy DH, which is a name you hear a lot around here, but they're covering for me as emergency backup Discord mode while I'm away this week, so thank you. Also, of course, they do have great videos, including this emotional support chicken vlog, which, oh my god, I just love this one so much. I don't know how many shoutouts that was, but it's probably enough to keep you going until I get back. Huge thank you, as always, to my Ko-fi supporters, because without you, honestly, I don't think I could afford craft supplies half the time. And special shout out to the Stitch Squad, who will shortly be getting way more cruise-based bonus content than they ever signed up for or wanted. Marianne Johnson, Sunny, Candy Riley Pettinger, Laura Salats, Enlightened Flamingo, Cross Stitch the Globe, I'd Rather Be Stitching, Angela Sue Harrison, Emily Hobbs, Maria Midnight Crafting, Lee the Cozy Crafter, Asta Vinka, and new members Callie Jenny, Sarah, and Angela Wells. I'll be back soon with some more crafty nonsense, so in the meantime, have a brilliant rest of your day and keep making cool stuff. Bye!